What is cooling? What's going on? Bengals fans, oh, it's time. And if you can't tell by my Halloween costume, I'm a hockey player. I'm not wearing hockey pads. No, we got it going on, man. What is cool with you guys? Happy Halloween. And it's been a scary ride for this Bengals team this season. So we got to talk about this roster. What do they need to do? There's a lot of big changes that need to happen for this football team in the offseason. So let's dive right into it. Get into this roster, free agency, mock draft, all those things. With the offensive line, this being the number one priority, when you look at this roster as a whole, the trench play has been very, very brutal. And starting with Orlando Brown Jr. at left tackle, he's been really underperforming that contract, in my opinion. I think they could move on from him this offseason. I think Fairchild is going to be a good solid guard at some point in his career. He's a decent pass protector. And this offensive line in general, I think, has to get better as a run blocking unit. That's really been a big problem for this football team. Actually, coming off one of their better weeks. And I also think it's a bit of a scheme thing, too. I want them to play a little bit more like they are under Joe Flacco with Joe Burrow. Get under center more consistently. Be a better running team. They need to do that. It has to be something that going into the offseason they prioritize as a scheme, as a team, to build out a better football team going forward. Center, Ted Karras. He's been given another one-year extension. You got Matt Lee, who's banged up right now, but he could be a developmental guy. I'm not super worried about the center position. I'm a lot more worried about left tackle, right guard, filling some of those voids. Even Amarius Mims, he's been up and down, in my opinion, and he's had some okay games, and he's also had some really rough games. I'm definitely not calling him a bust. There is some concern there, and I will be saying that they're going to need a good swing tackle, and then we're for sure going to be drafting a tackle, at least for Orlando Brown Jr., or filling something as a developmental guy. I think they need a day one impact, though, at a tackle, and then also on the interior, they could use some more help between free agency and or the draft. Jalen Rivers hasn't looked good. He struggled immensely in pass pro and also as a run blocker. He is a rookie, so give him some time. Maybe he can develop and whatnot. But for right now, I'd be banking more on just being a swing player, and they need to continue to invest in that. Yeah, Volzin's been injured. Lucas Patrick, swingman. I'm not, move the needle there. Both of those guys are free agents. So I am just saying we are going to be investing in the offensive line. It is the number one priority. You cannot keep having Joe Burrow get injured, wasting his career. Is this an Andrew Luck situation? No, we can't do it anymore. Duke, let's go. Let's get it together. Wide receiver, different story. Very good room, of course. When you have Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, you feel pretty good about the room. Could they use a solid number 3 weapon? Yes. And this offense kind of misses a Mike Gesicki because he was their third wide receiver last season in many ways. Andre Yoshivas is kind of like their deep threat and everything, and he's had the case of the drops this season in a major way. He's certainly not had his best season. Maybe he can recover a little bit. I'm not giving up on Yoshivas. At the same time, they need an upgrade as a wide receiver 3 in this offense in general. So whether it's Jermaine Burton, which I don't have a whole ton of confidence at, Mitchell Tinsley can be a 5th, 6th wide receiver. I do like Jordan Moore, but he's in the practice squad. We'll see. Charlie Jones, special teamer. As of this moment, I do want to invest in a solid slot receiver. This is not high priority, but it is something that, especially in a good wide receiver class, that maybe rounds 3 through 4 would make a lot of sense, like an Omar Cooper, an Antonio Williams, somebody like that in the slot that could be an immediate impact there would be really, really nice. Onto the tight end room. You got a lot of different guys in here, and ultimately it's going to come down to the coaching staff that comes in next season, or if they keep Zach Taylor, whatever they decide to do. Mike Gesicki could be a guy they move on from. He's injured right now. You got Noah Fant, who's actually really been their best tight end overall. Remember, Gesicki, as I said before, he's more of like a big slot. He doesn't really play tight end. Noah Fant, Drew Sample, you're more inline tight ends. Same thing with Eric All. And with this as a whole, I would just be saying, I try to bring back Noah Fant if you can, because I actually think Noah Fant's been pretty dang good for this team and been their best tight end overall. Sample does the dirty work, so I don't want to discount that. He's a blocker and everything like that. So good, solid blocking at number 2 tight end. He's being paid a decent amount, but that's okay. Not actually that much, only like a little under $3 million. So I'm fine with that for a good, solid blocking tight end. I would just say try to bring back Noah Fant. You can move on from Gesicki if you want to, just depending if you find a good slot receiver in the draft or a free agency, then that's something that maybe Gesicki isn't as big of a need. And I really wouldn't mind to do that. You got Cam Grandy as another guy, developmental blocker and stuff like that, receiving dude. Onto the running back room here, you got Chase Brown, who finally has gotten going a little bit under with Joe Flacco. As I said before, they're getting under center a little bit more often. You got Samaje Perine also coming off a pretty good couple of good games and stuff. He's a good number 2 back to have. They still could invest in this. Both of those guys are free agents in 2027. So that would be just something where you could go after another late round guy if you wanted to. Taj Brooks, maybe he can develop into a solid backer for this football team. I still think it'd be something we could look at later in the draft. It's not high priority. I do think they need to improve the offensive line first and foremost. Like, that is the number one thing out of all of this, is improving the offensive line. Running back is not something they have to go after unless it's just like too good to pass up. Need to improve the trenches if you're going to get better running back play here. And Chase Brown's been good. So on to the quarterback room, Joe Burrow clearly is the franchise quarterback, and I love Joe Flacco and everything like that. It just comes down to Joe Burrow. You got to keep him healthy, and that comes back to the trench play, improving that, and also not having to throw the football like 40 to 60 times a game would be nice. So if they have a better run game, it's going to inadvertently help out Joe Burrow. And that is a key thing that I think this team and this coaching staff needs to really emphasize. And whether they bring in a new coaching staff, I'm going to talk about coaching here in a little bit, and possibly a really good coaching candidate that this team would make a lot of sense for, especially from a scheme perspective and a relationship perspective. I guess you can probably already guess who that's going to be. It's going to be Joe Brady. I would love to see a Joe Brady type of scheme from the Buffalo Bills come in here with Joe Burrow and really implement that into this offense, because that is what this football team needs. Allow Joe Burrow to be Joe Burrow, of course. When you need Joe to be that number one guy that he is, he can do that, just like Josh Allen does for the Bills, but have a run game to lean on, and that would be huge and something this team really lacks at the moment. Joe Flacco, though, I love Joe, man. We'll see what happens. He's a free agent. Of course, if they can bring him back, then do it. I just think he'll end up trying to go somewhere where he can at least play, because he deserves that opportunity to play. He's still that dude. So we'll see what happens with Joe Flacco. We'll be watching this team because it's just so much fun with Joe Flacco. Jake Browning has not been good here this season for them as a backup. He's a free agent. So we'll have to look at the backup quarterback position. On to the defense side of the ball and the defensive line. All right. Whew. They've invested. They haven't invested well. And this is where we start talking about Duke Tobin. Is he a guy that they should move on from this offseason? And that's a very serious question, because I actually do like Duke Tobin. I get it. He's not drafted well, especially over these past like 4 or 5 years, or last 3 years specifically. It comes down to the ownership too. And it's not just on Duke. It's a lot of things that go involved with things. But in general, Trey Hendrickson, the way the contract situation's played out with him, I don't think they're going to end up re-signing him. And also, look, the deal he wants, I don't know exactly what the ballpark figures are. So those are all things that we'd have to wait and see what exactly numbers he's looking at. But at the same time, he is going to be 31 years old this offseason. So are you going to tie him up for a 3 or 4 year contract and give him like $30+ million? That would be a tough sell for me. So I also understand what Duke is looking at here and saying to himself, look, we have to think about the future. We've invested in it between Shamar Stewart, Miles Murphy, while neither one of those guys has really worked out at this point. I will say Murphy's having his best season. He still just doesn't have the hand placement. His hand technique is off. He really cannot disengage from blocks consistently. Shamar Stewart plays with violence. I love that with him. He is also very raw with his hands. So they need to develop these guys, and that goes hand in hand with your coaching staff, your D-line coach. You have to be able to develop your guys that you bring in. Maybe Duke needs to stop drafting just strictly like athletes and stuff, like underwear Olympics. He needs to start looking more at production over traits. That would be my biggest recommendation for Duke Tobin this offseason, is let's go get production guys rather than traits guys. And with Murphy, with Stewart, those are traits guys, and we need a little more production in here, especially if you lose Trey Hendrickson, because without Trey Hendrickson, this defensive line, they have no pressure at all. And that leads me to the interior of the defensive line, which also has no pressure. And they haven't been able to stop the run. You bring in TJ Slaton, that's been a bust of a signing. He cannot hold a double team at all right now. So McKinley Jackson wants to be traded. So overall, it's a bit of a disaster here on this defensive line. And that to me is something that we're going to have to invest in free agency. They've tried in the draft. We need to put some money towards this. They have plenty of cap. the Browns haven't historically really been big free agent spenders, but this is the time when you say, okay, the chips need to be a little bit more in, and you need to be a bit more aggressive. You got to do something here, because if not, you're going to waste Joe Burrow's career. You're going to, the amount of talent that you have on offense, you got to go ahead and say, we need to build a better defense. And everybody wants to be traded. And that leads me to the linebacker room. Logan Wilson also wants to be traded too. So what is going on? Clearly, there is something not right in this organization. Al Golden, too, could be partially responsible for this. Logan Wilson, Demetrius Knight, Oren Burks, Barrett Carter been their main rotation. Shaka Hayward's a good special teamer. He's injured right now. So as a whole, this linebacking room's not been good. And with Logan Wilson likely traded either at the trade deadline or at some point this offseason, I would just say you're going to need to bring in a veteran here in free agency. You got two young guys with Barrett Carter, Demetrius Knight. Maybe those guys can develop. Right now, Carter has been suspect, and Knight has not been great either. Knight, I see some flashes there, but in coverage, he's still a big-time liability. Carter can be more your coverage guy, I guess. Oren Burks is really their best linebacker in the room right now. And I do think he could end up being their starter if they do move on from Logan Wilson. I'm not worried about that. Burks is a solid veteran and everything like that. But this linebacking room, I would just say that there's other areas that we really have to pay our attention to. So I'm not ideally putting high draft capital unless Arvell Reese falls to this point. Like if Arvell Reese is where they're picking, then I'm taking Arvell Reese because he could also rush the passer for this team and really help them out in a multitude of ways. At the same time, though, I don't think he'll be there with where they're picking. So am I investing a high draft pick into the linebacker position for this football team? Probably not. They've invested, so we gotta develop these guys. Once again, Knight, Carter, we need to get some development in this room. On to the cornerback room now, which is also another area we need to invest in between free agency and the draft. I would say this is something that we can invest in a slot backup behind Dax Hill with the injury history he has, plus he's going to be going into a contract year. That's something where maybe like round 4 through round 7, we can find a slot guy. And then on the outside cornerback position, Cam Taylor-Britt, I think they'll move on from him this offseason. It's not been very good, especially over the past couple of seasons. You got Josh Duden, who could play in a pinch. Marco Wilson's a free agent. You have DJ Turner, who has been excellent this season. He's kind of come from nowhere for me this year. He's been one of the better cornerbacks in the NFL, period. I think he's been fantastic. He's had a couple of great games. I just remember watching that Green Bay Packer game, and he was just locked down in that one. And he's been really, really good this season in general. So at least you got yourself a decent corner. At least that's your hope, as he can continues to play at this high level. And then Dax Hill is a solid starter. Okay, he's got his moments. He's not been exceptional or nothing. However, he's been decent and certainly can be a solid, viable starter for them in the slot, and can also play on the outside too. But I would definitely be investing in the cornerback position on the outside and on as a slot developmental guy there. And then we go on to the safety room here. Jordan Battle, I feel decent about. He needs to improve his tackling and stuff. However, he's been really good as a interception machine this season, as a playmaker overall, and I still think he's fine. I'm not super worried about it. Sometimes you just miss some tackles, and that's the way it goes. I don't think it's horrible technique or anything. Geno Stone, though, they will have to look at finding a long-term answer at the safety position. So this is a good draft to need a safety. It's a very good draft. So my opinion on this is sign a solid veteran that can come in and be a day one starter, and then look on day 2 for a safety to be able to develop and be your long-term answer there, and pairing with Jordan Battle, or at least somebody in this room that could be a long-term starter. That would be the hope. Tyson Anderson's a good special teamer, so you got him. He's a free agent. They can bring him back pretty cheap, I would imagine. He's a restricted 2, I believe. Actually, no, he might be a UDFA. We'll get into that in a minute. But anyway, I am going to be just looking at safety somewhere on day 2. I think makes a lot of sense in this draft class. Let's go on to the coaching staff. We'll talk about GM2 here with Duke Tobin. Speaking of Duke Tobin, I do think this is a tough decision, because part of me says, like, I like Duke Tobin and the job he's done with some of the contracts and making it so that their cap situation's in a really good standing. At the same time, it is also, you look at the past couple of drafts and he's really missed on a lot of picks. So that is something that it's a philosophy, underwear Olympic type drafting. I want to see more actual production with the drafts. They need more impacts right away for this football team. They can't keep getting these guys and not developing them. So it's partially on the coaching staff and it's partially on the GM. And then ownership too, possibly too. Because, there's a lot of things that go into it. So it's not all on Duke. I think they have to have a serious talk and a serious look at with all these coaches. I would recommend looking at a new coaching staff. That's my opinion. Some people agree or disagree, but personally, I'd be looking at an all new coaching staff in many ways. Not everybody, some of these coordinators and stuff you can keep, but for the most part, I would be saying you got to go ahead and find some new coaching. As I said earlier, Joe Brady would be my recommendation. You bring him in here with that connection he has with Joe Burrow and the offense that he can instill a way better run game. That's who I'm looking for. That is the coach that I would love to bring into this team. And I think he would be exactly what this team needs. Let's go on to the free agency period. And let's start off with some team cuts here where I'm going to go ahead and let go of Orlando Brown Jr. I'm going to save that money, just too much money for the way he's playing at the moment. TJ Slayton, I'm going to let go. I'm going to assume Logan Wilson gets traded, whether it's after the season, whether it's before the before the trade deadline, you name it. I'm not going to factor in any saved money. This is just different options that you could list out there. Overall, I expect him to be traded at some point this season. Mike Gesicki, this was a tough one for me because I do like Mike Gesicki, but I would just say maybe they can upgrade the slot position instead, and then we can re-sign Noah Fant, and he can be a good number 1, number 2 tight end punch with Sample, and then also with Eric All coming back. So I just kind of looked at that and said, all right, we can use that money to sign other players and stuff. Cody Ford, I'm going to let go. Jermaine Burton, McKinley Jackson also could be a trade candidate, either which way. That gets us to over $103 million. Now, I do want to go ahead and talk about a restructure / a small pay cut for BJ Hill. I think it makes a lot of sense for Hill. I think he wants to stay here. From all my understanding, who knows, right? Things can change. But maybe we can ask him for a small pay cut, and for return, we can give him a little bit of an incentive into his deal or a bonus to give him some money up front. That would be my recommendation there for BJ Hill. Now let's go on to the team free agent signing period where I'm going to re-sign Noah Fant, Dalton Risner, get both of those guys in here back. Risner has some good depth on this offensive line, solid veteran that can play both guard spots and has actually stabilized a little bit of their interior a bit. So he's just got to get healthy and whatnot. But Noah Fant, I feel like it's been really good. So 2-year deal, $14 million, not super expensive. Defensively, Sample, Giles Harris, and Anderson all can give them rotation / special teams ability and just going to be more depth on the roster. I'm letting go of Trey Henderson, just too much money. And I just think with the way everything's worked out, maybe they look to get a go on in different directions. Let's go on to the restricted period now, and exclusive restricted. I'm going to bring back Tinsley, Grandy, and also Hayward. So that's not a whole ton. Jake Browning, though, I'm not going to give him the second round tender. I'll let him go. We'll sign somebody in free agency here. On to the free agent signing period now, and we're making a couple of big splashes. All right. First up, let's get into some of the depth on offense. Mitchell Trubisky will be our backup. Jahan Dotson like a 4th wide receiver. Braxton Jones, I said this is kind of like a Chiefs situation where they brought in Jalen Moore, and even though he's been a backup for them really all season long, I don't care if Braxton Jones sits on the bench for the entirety of the year. Like, that'd be a great thing, in my opinion. We're still going to be addressing this in the draft. Braxton Jones can slide in left tackle for the moment. We'll go into the draft for sure and be looking at that. But we pay him, get him on this 1-year contract as a prove-it sort of thing for him, and at the same time gives us that depth that we need. Dylan Parham, put him more at his natural position at the right guard. The Raiders have been playing at left guard, and it is what it is, but put him over right guard, more of his natural side, going back to his college days in Memphis, 3-year deal. That'd be something like a 1.5-year type of guarantee situation that they get out of this contract really quick if they need to. I just also, same thing, I just say we need to have good depth on this offensive line. We need somebody here. Parham's not a bad football player. I really think he's a decent football player and could start for them at right guard. And you have Risner, too, who can help if you have injuries or if somebody's not playing well enough. On the defense side, okay, here's some big signings, right? Boye Mafe, I could see the argument that he gets the franchise tag for Seattle. I totally understand that. And I think there's a very good chance of that. But if he does hit the market, which he could, all right, then boom shakalaka, I'm going after Boye Mafe. Same thing with Devontae Wyatt. Now, I think there's a good chance that Wyatt could hit the market, especially after Milton Williams just got a monster contract. So we get both of these guys on big-time money. And also, remember, they're paying Micah Parsons, so they may not be able to pay all these guys out here. So Devontae Wyatt, that one I could see happening, actually. And then Foley Fadakashi is some depth, but they need pass rush, and Fadakashi could be a good run-defending backup. Wyatt and Mafe are going to be pass rush guys. They're going to help them out immediately in that department. Get some pressure on quarterbacks. Christian Rosenboom's been solid for Carolina. Get some depth there. Benjamin St-Juste, more depth as well. But Rosenboom could start right away, too. I think Rosenboom's been solid for Carolina. He plays with his hair on fire, I feel like. Julian Bachman, good player. He's just been injured a lot. That's been his Achilles heel. We'll definitely look in the draft, but he could be a guy that could start early on for this football team. That takes us to the roster before the draft, highlighting the needs again. Trust me, we're not done with offensive line. We'll be looking at it. And then I would say that a slot wide receiver, another area I'll be looking at. Running back could be a late round pick again, / UDFA sort of thing. Not the top priority, but it will be something I consider in the draft. At least we got some depth on the offensive line now, or at least some sort of, decent ability on the interior, and we can invest in the tackle position. Defensively, the defensive line looks better. I feel like they could roll out in the season, and I feel like this is something that we can get some pressure on quarterbacks. We've improved the interior and the edge position. Still an area like they could use some more draft capital into. I do want to invest in the secondary, corner, safety, both areas that I want to look at. Linebacker, probably not going to do a whole ton, just hoping that we can get some solid play and some more like youth development with guys like Knight and Carter. That's going to be the big thing there. But it is draft time. And with the draft, I'm starting off with Spencer Fanu from Utah, going to come in. I don't care if he plays right tackle or left tackle. You figure it out. It just really doesn't matter. I'm putting the best 2 offensive tackles out there and going to need that third tackle for injuries, for depth, or bad play, whatever the case may be. Run out with 6 offensive linemen if you have to. They need to improve the offensive line, period. I think Fanu's a guy that could end up switching over to left tackle because of the athleticism. And when you look at guys who can transition a little bit better, most of the times it's guys with good athleticism. So Fanu, put him in here somewhere, whether it's your left tackle of the future, or if you want to move Mims over, I don't really care however you want to do that. Or, hey, if Mims is struggling and Fanu ends up replacing him, then you do what you got to do. If Braxton Jones is looking great, you just have to improve the offensive line. I cannot emphasize that enough. Then we go on to Chris Johnson from San Diego State. This guy has been fantastic this season throughout his career. He's a really smooth athlete. He's got extremely, extremely good lateral agility, and he can start and stop on a dime. Very critical for a cornerback. He can mirror with ease. His corner ability to cover guys a one-on-one is where it needs to be. And in zone coverage, he really, really excels at reading quarterbacks' eyes and making plays. He's an interception machine. And he doesn't have to start right away. You got Josh Newton. We bring in St-Juste as well. So they've got some guys who can start right away. He is coming to a smaller school competition, so I understand that going to the next level. But dude is super talented, and I think he's going to start rising up boards, especially in a cornerback class that maybe doesn't have a whole ton of depth in it. Then we go on to Zakee Wheatley from Penn State, safety here, going to help them out. He should be an immediate impact as well. He's an older prospect. He'll be like 24 years old when he hits the draft, I believe, or somewhere around there. So that's something to keep in mind. However, look, I'm not worried about it. Even if you just have him for his rookie contract, I'm perfectly fine with that. And I think he'll be a great 1-2 punch with Jordan Battle. He does a great job playing free safety for Penn State. And somebody that has good enough range and good size to be able to patrol the back end and can make big time plays for this football team. Next pick, Antonio Williams from Clemson. Hasn't gone the way this season that I'm sure would have hoped for him, but he can be a really, really solid slot impact. Solid enough athleticism. He's decently overall, has some linear speed. He's not going to blow by anybody or anything like that, but certainly has the twitch ability to get open, create some space for himself. Solid enough yak guy as well. And I do think he could be an immediate impact in there, at least to compete with Yoshi Bosch in the slot. Then we got Jamari Taylor from Virginia. Man, he is a guy that I think is a little underrated out there. I was watching some film on him earlier, and I'm like, dang, this guy's a little mini bowling ball out there. So I'm going to go ahead and draft this guy in the 6th round and get some more depth in this running back room. Maybe he goes higher. I don't know. I don't know where the NFL is going to be at on him right now. But dude is a little bit of a little bouncing bowling ball out there and tough to bring down. And definitely really impressed with his film. So we get ourselves another running back. Then we go into Jeremiah Cooper. Here's my guy. All right, this dude's had some injuries. I get that. He's a little smaller. I don't think he's 6 foot. I think he's going to come in more like 5'10". He's a slot guy at the next level. And that's totally fine. He can be a great developmental slot, but I think he's really sticky in coverage. He makes plays. Watched a good amount of Jeremiah Cooper, and I do really, really like him. I think he's very underrated. Then we go on to TJ Guy, the situational pass rusher at Michigan. He's undersized as well. He's got shorter arms, in my opinion. He's going to be more of a rotational guy, and that's okay. All right, he can be a special teamer type of core guy as well. And for a 7th round pick, if I can get a core special teamer, I'm very, very happy with that. High motor player. So this is the draft. This is free agency. Everything that we've been able to do. As I talk about new coaching staff, maybe a new GM as well. That's going to be all things you have to really look at. Joe Brady would be an awesome one. Maybe Rick Spielman as a GM would be a fun one. Anyway, roster-wise, offensive line, clear need. We got Spencer Fanu in the draft. We got Braxton Jones in free agency. We got Reisner back. We got Parham in free agency as well there. So just trying to build as much depth as we can, have some quality starters, and whether Fanu starts at right tackle, left tackle, you get the best man out there. Running back, we get some depth there with Jamari Taylor. Wide receiver, Jahan Dotson as a 4th wide receiver early on. Antonio Williams can compete there as well for a 4th receiver, maybe even a 3rd wide receiver with Yoshi Vash in the slot. And then we go on to the defense, where big improvements on the defensive line and free agency, right? We spent some moolah, no doubt about it, but man, it's hopefully going to be worth it with Wyatt and Mafe helping this team out tremendously. And TJ Guy has some depth. We didn't do a whole ton in the draft, but it is what it is. I wanted to spend some other picks in the secondary, like Chris Johnson, Jeremiah Cooper, thinking about the future there, and also potentially a day 1 starter with Chris Johnson. Zaki Wheatley also could be a day 1 starter for this football team in that back-end secondary. So that's it for the Cincinnati Bengals. Let me know what you think, agree or disagree, Bengals fans. What would you do differently? I hope you guys have a really good Halloween, and I'll talk to you later.